Call to order the Jacksonville Planning Advisory Board meeting for January the 8th. We will stand and be led by the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Steve Forney and followed by with a prayer, Homer Spring.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day in which we come together to do the business for the citizens of Jacksonville. We pray that you be with us as we deliberate and help us make the best possible decision. We also pray that you be with those families that are struggling to keep warm and people in our community that are trying to get through this weather. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right, so thank you very much. So, wow, at this time, I want to thank Mr. Homer Spring for taking over the meeting in November. I was out of state, couldn't get back here in time, and then we didn't have a meeting in December. So I feel like we've been on a vacation. So but we're all here. It's a brand new year, and the snow caught everybody off guard. Hope you had fun. Hope you had safe. I know I had fun with my kids. So, but I'm also glad to be back at work. So anyway, glad to see everybody here. So we will move on with tonight's approval of the agenda that's been presented before us.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, Ms. Vander. Okay, we have approval by first by Ms. Vanderveer, second by Mr. Spring. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. The agenda, great, thank you, that's unanimous. A review and approval of the minutes from November the 13th. Do we have any additions, deletions, corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes of the last regular meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Spring to approve, second by Mr. Jim Doran. Okay. All right. Those in favor of that, please raise your hand, please. Okay, thank you. City Council update. Mr. Bob Warden, how you doing, sir?
Hi, sir. How are you doing this evening?
Great.
I was just refreshing myself on what some of those code UDO text amendments that we did here a while back. Bear with me just a quick second. This goes back to November, so my memory wasn't real good. I was telling some of the gentlemen my memory is, as I've gotten older, a little bit slower. So
That's why you have that tablet, right? That's it. At our November meeting, November 21st meeting, we approved the UDO text amendments that y'all approved at your November 13th meeting. The significant changes had to do with some of the guarantees that we were required of the developers. You might remember we had a task force who sat down and said, here are some of the reasons why it's cheaper to build out in the county than it is to build in the city. And we looked at some of their suggestions and of course y'all did too, and made some changes to that so that we're trying to make us a little more on an equal footing with the county when it comes to per square foot cost of building. Primarily, most of the cost was in the lot. Some of the guarantees and fees that we required of developers for the lots, the water, the sewer, the sidewalks up front. So with your approval and with our approval, hopefully we've made that playing field a little more level, I hope. So that's one of the things we did. The other thing was we also approved the rezoning of Brookwood Baptist, again based on y'all's recommendation. We didn't change anything that y'all had done, and I've since heard from a couple folks that they're not sure how that's going to work yet. They had some of the immediate neighbors. They had some concerns, but we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully that's a good thing, and that we haven't hurt the neighborhood by that decision. That's one of those that I'm kind of reserving judgment a little bit on till we see how it plays out. But hopefully all's well. That's all, sir. Hope that was a little long-winded tonight, but thank you. Always good to hear from you. All right, thank you. All right, I see there's no old business, so we'll move on to the new business for this evening. And that's a UDO text amendment request.
Ryan, how you doing?
Mr. Chairman, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Mr. Chairman, Plan Board members, tonight you have a Unified Development Ordinance text amendment. To kind of refresh everybody's memory, the Unified Development Ordinance text amendments can occur multiple ways. One of them is that staff sees some problems and we want to bring it forward to have corrections made to the Unified Development Ordinance. The mayor and council can direct staff to make changes to their ordinance books. Or an applicant, a citizen, can request that an amendment be made. And that's what we have before us tonight. And in conjunction with that, because of some of the concerns that staff has, we kind of piggyback an alternative that we can support that we'll kind of go over as kind of a fallback plan that staff can support. But they get their opportunity tonight and in front of city council to say, hey, this is kind of what we're wanting to do and why we're doing it. So with that, I'll get started with that we prepared this at the request of, and I hope I said this correct, Niche Motorsports. And representatives from them, from Niche Motorsports are here tonight. You've got Mr. Kevin Holmes and you have Mr. Jamie Ray. I'm sure that they'll be interested in having a conversation with the planning board, and they're here to answer any questions as well that you may have along the way. But basically, after Kevin reached out to staff, it was probably back in October or November, and we kind of started having some dialogue about a potential use in a downtown building. And there are several different kind of options. Some uses are currently allowed as a special use, some are not allowed at all. And it didn't necessarily cover everything that they were looking to do. So because it's a staff-initiated request, regardless of whether staff supports the request or not, we basically have to draft a code that fits within our ordinance that meets what their intended land use is, because they're the one making the request. So staff basically looked at the code, talked with them, came up with a solution that we think meets our ordinance and fits the business model that they would like to operate in downtown. And we have that as your attachment A tonight. So basically, attachment A is the request that they're asking for. And what's associated with that is basically creating a new automotive land use in our use table. And as you can see with the first bullet, that basically we would be revising 3 sections of our ordinance, Article 4 and Article 9. So Article 4.1, the use table, would be that we would create a new land use. And that land use would be titled Automotive Preservation and Restoration. When you create a new land use, you got to make sure that you define it. So we've basically come up with a definition of what exactly that means. And basically, it's a business where passenger automobiles, motorcycles, trailers, or light trucks are either preserved, which is keeping the original components, or restored, which is to return to like new conditions. Within the downtown district, we have, like I mentioned, 4 automotive uses. 2 are not allowed, 2 are special uses. Staff's stance on this is that basically creating this use is kind of blending the 4 together into one and making it permitted. So that combination would be automotive sales and rentals, auto repair, paint and body work, and let's see, there's one other one.
Without.
Let's see.
One without. Repair and service without. Painting, body work.
I'll find it here in a second. Basically, just that there's 4 land uses that 2 are allowed with a special use, 2 are not. This would be basically finding a way to create a new land use where it would be permitted within the downtown land use. And basically, staff's concerns with that are, it's kind of opening up industrial type restoration work in the downtown area, and we just don't believe that that's kind of the right fit for downtown. Regardless, the use-specific standards as it relates to should planning board and city council support the change with the Unified Development Ordinance, the thing that we created with the UDO back in 2014 is use-specific standards. So we created those use-specific standards for the applicant's request. And basically that is that if you were to adopt their request to allow automotive restoration and preservation, that all of the work would have to occur within inside a building. It's got to be done inside of the enclosed building. You couldn't do it on the side of the street. You couldn't do it in the parking lot. You couldn't do it outside. The work would have to be done inside. We know that in some cases, there's going to be a need to store some stuff outside. So similar to other automotive uses, we would propose that it would be limited to 20% of the maximum lot area. In addition, that would have to be screened by a fence or wall, 8 feet in height, and would have to be the same material as the primary building facade unless another suitable material is approved by the city manager. They would not be able to have vehicles stored or parked for the source of parts. And one of the big concerns that we had was the fact that some downtown buildings, basically they have common walls on one or both sides. So we're concerned about noise, vibration, possibly odor, that if you have a close neighbor that shares a common wall, we would need to kind of create some separation there. So that's the reason for the 30-foot separation for the work areas. So basically, if you've got an 80-foot wide unit, you could only do it in the 50 that's away from an adjoiner, or sandwich it in the middle if you have two buildings on either side of you. Some additional use-specific standards is that of the entire area, 40% is the maximum that the fabrication area could occur within, along with parts, bays, or similar areas. So we're trying to keep the fabrication area of the land use lower, and the remaining 60% could be used for showroom of the vehicles, retail for things such as T-shirts, belts, buckles, helmets for motorcycles, gear, whatever type retail that they would like to have there for the business, as well as their office space. And the last thing for the use-specific standards, I'm sorry, there's three more things. The vehicles being maintained on site shall be owned by the business, kept inside the building or storage lot. So it's not something to where I could drop my car off to have work done on it there. It would have to be pieces that they acquire, that they're working on to restore, to then sell themselves. And the final two things is that major paint and body work would be prohibited, and that the preservation and restoration work on vehicles not owned by the business is prohibited. I think I kind of basically talk about that. So those are kind of a little bit of an overlap. Now, when staff came up with these use-specific standards, we basically did this in concert with the applicant. So they're aware of these use-specific standards. They, unless something has changed since our discussion there at the end of December, they're in support of these use-specific standards. So it's not a question about whether these use-specific standards works for them or not. They've helped us draft these standards. So, you know, if Planning Board and City Council wants to adopt the amendment with these use-specific standards, they're already in line with these. There may be something else that we haven't thought of that, you know, you all could support if this is added, then that's something that obviously would have to be discussed with the applicant to see whether that would still meet their work plan. So as I mentioned before, just, you know, a little bit concerned when you look at, we've got 4 existing automotive uses, 2 are not allowed at all, 2 are special use. This would basically create a permitted use in downtown, which means they would just apply for a certificate of occupancy, and they could open. If they have any building modifications, then obviously they would have to get that permitted, but basically no planning board or city council type approval. One of the things that staff talked about that we could support is the creation of a breakdown of automobile sales and rentals. And basically what we propose, and now I'm going to get into the staff recommendation that staff does support, which would be kind of a part of what they were wanting to do. And that's specific to allowing, modifying our definition of automobile sales and rentals to break out motorcycles, ATVs, and jet skis from that definition, and basically create a provision to allow a motorcycle, ATV, or jet ski sales within the downtown area. Like with the applicant request, we would create a new definition, and we would revise the automotive sales and rentals definition, Likewise, we would create use-specific standards. They're basically pretty much the same thing, just geared for the motorcycle and ATV. And the same 40-60 split. Same prohibitions as it relates to major paint and body work, and preservation and restoration work on vehicles not owned by the business would be prohibited. So that's basically so you got one text amendment request, and we weren't able to support their request, so we're recommending that that be denied, but we're recommending that you do consider allowing the motorcycle sales piece in the downtown as a permitted use, because we think that that would be a benefit to have in the downtown. Be happy to try to answer any questions that the board may have at this time, and as I stated, Mr. Jamie Ray, Mr. Kevin Holmes is here tonight, should you have any questions of the applicant and their request.
How do we define major paint body work?
It's a good question. I don't believe it's defined.
So how would that be policed or checked?
Probably something we would need to kind of shore up.
And really on the same line, being familiar with all, ATVs, motorcycles, and jet skis, many of the repairs come into fuel tanks. If another business was there, or in the case of jet ski, running into concrete stanchions as such, if the repair was done inside with current standards for clean air, why couldn't it be done?
You talking about what their request is
Yeah,
versus the
well,
other?
whether it's their request or whether we're talking the ordinance. If I opened a jet ski business down there, and like I say, and it was repairs and restorations, when you're working with gel coat and painting as such, most all of it's done indoors now, and they have the heat lamps and the air filtration systems. I'm just saying, why wouldn't that be included?
I think it would be. Minor repairs. So
Okay,
right now, if you want to have just a paint and body shop, it's permitted in the industrial zone. All right. In the quarter commercial zone, which is Western Boulevard, it's a special use. So when we adopted the UDO in 14, we kind of delineated that's more of an industrial use, not something we would expect to see in Western Boulevard. This would basically be in, some of what they're doing fits within the paint and body work land use.
okay,
It's not allowed in downtown. If their request is approved, in essence, you're allowing paint and body shops in downtown as a permitted use. If that's the direction that we go in, I think in essence what you would do is you wouldn't adopt their amendment. You would change the slash, which is prohibited, for paint and body work in the downtown district, and you would make it a P for permitted or S for special.
okay. So within the scope of this, a fender or a fuel tank is not extensive.
And
That
that's,
would be minor.
that would probably be what I would consider minor as well.
Okay.
And with motorcycles versus vehicles, it may be a small fuel tank. Part of the discussions, if it's got to be painted, it would be shipped off somewhere off-site.
Okay.
Let's say that it's a touch-up. Let's say that there's just a little ding. That may be something to where, I know that you got the scratch and dent mobile vendor that goes to different locations, and that may be able to be handled on-site, inside the building.
Okay.
My concern would be if it's a major restoration where you're basically taking it down to chassis. The whole thing will have to be painted. Are you using a powder coat paint? Is that what you'll be using as opposed to a liquid?
Well, I was gonna say, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I mean.
Have him come on up, yes.
Okay, Mr. Rager.
you want. Mr. Keys, our goal would be to try to do all of our paint and all of our body work off-site, to include a powder coat.
Okay.
We've got vendors, we've got individuals that we can utilize. We want to keep our money in the county. So it would be, a stone's throw from here, but it would be outside the district. First and foremost, paint and body work, especially major paint and body work, has to meet an EPA standard. And that's something for upfit that doesn't make sense in the building. And it also, it's a dirty environment. We don't want to bring that to the downtown area. So we would take anything that's chassis related, that's going to be powder coated or over coated, and we'd have that done out of our building. Any of the major body work, to include any time that we apply paint, would happen outside of the building. Just for the simple fact that on the vehicles that we're going to be refurbishing, and we're looking at automobiles and motorcycles, we're going to want a top quality job, and that's something that we can't do in our facility. We can do all the mechanicals in the facility out of sight, out of mind, but as far as doing the heavy paint work, I just really need to leave that to a professional, somebody that's going to give us a top quality job.
It
And
puts space restraints on us too. We don't have the
That's
space
right.
for that, so that's another reason why we'd outsource it.
So tell me exactly what you'll be doing in your building downtown.
The disassembly and the reassembly of major restorations, and/or the refurbishment, light refurbishment of already restored cars, nice cars, automobiles and motorcycles that are in pretty good shape, but they need that last 10% of attention.
Like,
So that
they
we
need
can-
like upholstery work, you would do it there.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Upholstery work, we could do the upholstery work inside the building itself, and/or we could we could remove it, have somebody do the upholstery work, and then reinstall it. Our game plan is to keep everything within the constraints of the building itself and utilize that 30-foot room that we have as a buffer to our neighbor, and do all of our work and if you see the layout that we have on the attachment, do all of our work with that buffer, and then we'll have maybe 1 to 2 cars in rotation and several cars for sale, as well as motorcycles.
If you look at attachment C that I included, and I know that due to the weather, you didn't get your normal packet like you usually would, but if you look under attachment C, there is a description of what the applicants turned in to us. There's also a floor plan. Now, I will tell you that that floor plan was their original submittal, and that does not incorporate the discussions that we had about the buffering and things like that. So that floor plan would be changed.
Flip-flopped it.
Yeah, basically, flip it, the right would go to the left, left would go to the right, because of the concerns that staff had, and they understood those concerns, and they have the flexibility that they were willing to flip-flop those areas. So the retail and office area would be on the right, and the fabrication and parts and repair type work would be on the left.
The auto bays would still remain in the back left of the building, and it's entered through the courtyard of the exterior in the back. So everything comes in and out from the rear of the building.
Our goal is so that the average passerby wouldn't even know what we were doing. We don't want bay doors. We want to be able to basically utilize that courtyard as our in and out.
And so the applicants have a building already, and a building in mind, the building that they have. We've got to look at it in terms of, where you have the ability to flip-flop, the next person, if this gets codified and approved, that, we've got to have the standards in place that apply to everybody. So this may not work in just every building, but if it's big enough, if it doesn't have neighbors on either side that directly abut, with a firewall separation, then at least we've got some standards to create that buffering for noise, odor, vibration, things like that, which is one of the bigger concerns that we had.
Does the ordinance, as rewritten by staff, meet your needs?
If we could utilize the facility for automobiles and motorcycles, yes.
Yes, sir.
So I believe if you look at the ordinance in attachment A,
Yes.
is basically meets your needs, your request.
That's what we've crafted together.
Right. Attachment B is the staff-supported change. So if you go with B, that doesn't meet their full desire. If you go with A instead of B, then that does meet their full desire, because like I stated, we drafted the code with the applicants to make sure that their business model was met, because they're the one asking for the change. We couldn't bring something to you that didn't meet their request.
Unfortunately, Exhibit B only meets 50% of the revenue projections, and probably less than that, because the motorcycles themselves don't generate the revenue enough even to generate the new jobs for the people that we have slated to take those jobs for the automobile restoration, because they're project specific. The folks who are going to do the automobile restoration, that's their specialty. So it doesn't necessarily.
Okay, so the ordinance does not include the automotive restoration.
The ordinance that's in attachment A does.
Okay.
The staff recommendation in attachment B does not include automotive. It is strictly motorcycles, jet skis, ATVs.
I would like some clarification on one thing. It says that everything they work on has to be owned by them, so they can't be working on something for other people?
That's correct.
And that's a change that we made, working with Ryan and his staff. We were originally gonna do, some in-house, repairs and enhancement of other folks' vehicles, but, you know, working with, to write this ordinance, we changed our business model so that we would only work on the automobiles and motorcycles that we own for resale.
So in other words, you have to purchase them in order to work on them and then try to sell them, but you can't do it for somebody else.
No, ma'am.
So we would hold title to all the vehicles that we restore.
Thank you.
And our goal there is to lessen the number of vehicles that we would have stored on site. And I think that met, recommendation that Ryan and his staff.
Well, when I look on the back page here, talks about your daily operations. Under motorcycle work area, it says provide your own repair / service of customer-owned motorcycles.
That's right. This was actually the original draft.
Okay.
And that draft
Okay,
has been
all right.
changed. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Why don't we want to include automotive?
It's one of those things to where, if you look at it just from an automotive sales versus motorcycle sales, we can support. When you have a motorcycle sales and you have an automotive sales, there's certain things that are accessory. So you can go down the road to any automotive, let's Sanders Ford. You can go in there and you can have tires put on it. You can have service work done. You can have a motor swapped out. That basically you kind of increase the scale big time. And I mean, we weren't even in favor of just changing automotive sales to a permitted use in downtown. But because motorcycle was within the definition of automotive sales, we said, hey, you know, having motorcycle sales, kind of like we have the bicycle gallery in downtown, you know, might be a nice step forward in downtown, and we could support that. And we know that there's certain things that goes along as an accessory use for a motorcycle sales place, a tune-up, you know, putting on a new exhaust system, you know, putting the lighting on the motorcycles, that it's at a smaller scale than an automotive. So we tried to craft something that we could support that partially met what they were looking for. It may not completely. So let's say for a moment that they say, look, you know, that doesn't really work for us. We're telling you that we don't support A. Regardless, we think that you should put B in the ordinance, even if you're not in support of A either. Because we think having, breaking down automotive sales, splitting it out so you have auto sales and you've got motorcycle sales, and then allowing the motorcycle sales in downtown could be a nice, you know, shot in the arm for downtown, because it could bring traffic to downtown, but not at the same level and scale as an automotive restoration body shop, auto sales place in downtown. So that's the primary reason.
So,
So on a scale of things, the Harley facility, as we see on 17 South, would be permitted, but in the case of Sanders Ford, they would not.
That's a big motorcycle dealership too, though.
I know.
But you're correct.
I was actually gonna go there.
I beat you
I mean,
there.
Lejeune Motorcycles down here would be able to go
Yes.
downtown. But a Sanders Ford or Marine Chevrolet or a Williamson Nissan would not be able to open up in downtown. Now, I don't think it's gonna happen that way anyhow, because
Yeah.
you got outside versus inside, and we're saying right off the bat, regardless of whether you go with A or whether you go with B, the product's inside the building.
And this is boutique. It
This is high-end.
Right.
You know, we're selling $100,000.
And to put it in perspective, since there is the restraint to have all of our sales inside, nothing on the lot, then you have to think, we're only gonna have 6 cars at a time. But they're gonna be high-end, white-collar, boutique cars. Barrett Jackson worthy, SEMA worthy cars. For instance, we currently have, in rotation, we have a 1962 Corvette and a 1964 Corvette. The 64 is pretty far along. It's going to be a complete restoration. It's probably going to be a $85,000 car when we're done. So the capital it would take to hold that many cars, 6 cars, while we have 2 more cars in rotation for restoration, it's a lot of money. But it's also a good reflection of the type of business that could be downtown. As opposed to having 20 to 30, not beater, but not as high-end motorcycles.
You're not getting 100%, but you can live with the ordinance, the proposed ordinance.
We could live with the A amendment. With the stipulations that we do not have, we can't work on other folks' customers' cars. We only work on ours.
I think that's the biggest thing with A. The A that's proposed is pretty much their original request, the only exception being limited to just pieces that they own. That would be the only
We've foregone
difference.
some of the revenues by agreeing to that portion of it, and we're okay with that.
Right. Versus B would strictly be no automobiles. It would be motorcycles, jet skis, ATVs. There was some discussion internally about whether we even include ATVs and jet skis. And the consensus was, in a lot of these motorcycle dealerships, I'll use Yamaha, for example. They sell Yamaha motorcycles, Yamaha ATVs, and Yamaha jet skis. It's kind of a package deal. And versus just singling out motorcycles, we expanded it to include the ATV and jet ski as well, just because that's pretty typical.
I will be honest, I'm a diehard customer of Lejeune Motorsports. So I don't look to take any of their clientele. They have a different clientele than we're gonna have. We're gonna be looking at Ducati, we're gonna be looking at Moto Guzzi, we're gonna be looking at BSA, Triumph, some boutique motorcycles in-house. So, our foot traffic's gonna be lower than Lejeune Power Sports. But the product that the individual's gonna get, it's gonna be a better product. So we're gonna have fewer motorcycles. We'd rather not sell in-house to make the revenue that we need to support the building and support the business. We'd rather not sell 100 units a month. We'd rather sell 10 units a month that are high quality, that whenever people walk by from the bicycle gallery, when they walk by from the bicycle gallery on their way to one of your tenants, on the way to a different building, they go, whoa, look, it's a 50s, 60s, 70s decor in a boutique automotive sales.
It fits the architecture of the building
And it's beautiful.
quite well. If you've ever been in 701 Newbridge, it's the old office supply store.
What was it? What was the prior business there?
Supply, it was originally a laundromat. It's right adjacent to where the new Children's Museum is going in,
Yeah.
on that corner. On the left-hand side, it's pretty bare brick, with 3 existing bay doors in the back already. One of them being an real old vintage wood door with an overhead. You walk in to the right side, and you have exposed trusses, wood trusses, with clerestory windows throughout the whole thing. You know, we'd dress the floors up, and that would be the sales showroom. Exposed brick kind of gives the feeling of the vintage style, and that exposed kind of loft look is what we're after.
A question, and I assume that you've looked at this. You talk about putting a lift in there, but those buildings, those ceilings are not very high. I'm visualizing only getting it up maybe 3-4 feet off the floor. Is that?
Quite high.
Yeah, I think the ones in there.
Ceiling on one side of the building is 12 foot, and it's 11 foot 2 inches on the other side of the building. I currently work for Stevenson Motorsports, and I was Johnny's personal mechanic on his GT3 Cup car, and also helped with some of the restorations of some of his personal stuff. And we utilize a lot of different type of lifts within our facility, one of which would work for either of those applications.
Are these pictures from that building, or are they?
No, ma'am, they'll give you a visualization, sort of the ideas of, so you can picture sort of, you know, the culture and what we're after. You know, the idea is also to, as a marketing, obviously, but to bring in a particular culture. If you've ever heard of Cars and Coffee, it's a car club where on Saturdays people get together and they sit around, show each other's cars, drink coffee, whatever. Same thing with, you know, vintage style bikes. The Gentleman's Ride, which is actually a ride for men's health and cancer donations. So, you know, that's sort of the idea, is to get the community involved in what we're doing. Subsequently, I own another building right down the street, which is 614 New Bridge, and we're in the process of getting permitted plans submitted to the city to renovate that building as well. 2 restaurants on the bottom and then office space above. So, you know, I personally have a vested interest in the downtown area here. I'd like to see the area get to what we feel like it can be, so.
When I came here tonight, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about this, but I think that in attachment A, having to have everything in the building, all sales in the building, it takes care of one of my concerns about it being a used, a car lot. Because you're right, you're only gonna fit so many cars inside the building. And it's just not, it's not the same as when you go out in some of the well-traveled areas in town. And the part about the major body, paint and body work being prohibited, and having to own the vehicles that you're working on, I really don't have a problem with attachment A, or ordinance as presented in A. That's just my opinion.
Okay. You want to make a?
You want me to do this right?
Sure.
Okay, I move we, let's see if I can do this right. I recommend approval of the UDO text amendment found in attachment A with, does that include everything that's in attachment A? I don't have to make any
Yes.
statements about it?
Unless you want to make changes.
No, sir. That's my motion.
We have a motion to approve the UDO text amendment found in attachment A.
Remember the statement, you can find some information there in the action needed.
Run it by me again. Ryan, what were we saying?
On the first page of the agenda item, this is the
Okay.
public interest.
Oh, that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You have to, you can't word it, you can't read it verbatim, though.
wouldn't dare. Well, let's see. Okay. Well, the action, let's see, it talks about, your action needed talked about attachment B, correct?
You could change B to A,
Yeah.
and then you could strike through the without the industrial components.
Okay. So my motion is to approve the Unified Development and Ordinance Text Amendment found in attachment A, provided it advances the public interest by assisting with the creation of a retail environment.
All right. Are you second it?
Second motion.
Okay, Mr. Keys is second that. Any further discussion, please?
You may even work for that, didn't you, Ryan?
All right. Okay, hearing none, those in favor, raise your right hand, please. 2, 3. All right, that is unanimous.
Now,
Okay.
this is going before city council. There'll be a public hearing also.
That is correct. It will
Yes.
be in front of city council for public hearing and consideration for adoption on Tuesday night next week, which is January,
16th.
we've been talking about February meetings all day today. So it'll be January the 16th, at 7 PM here in council chambers. January 16th, 7 o'clock here in council chambers.
And all adjacent landowners or?
No, sir. With text amendments, we just have to advertise in the daily news. And as with all newspaper ads, regardless of whether it's text amendment, map amendments, whatever, we always advertise on Fridays. Now, there is an occasional, we'll bump it to a Saturday, like we almost had this one bumped to Saturday, but we were able to get it in to the Daily News within their deadline with New Year's kind of throwing everybody's beginning of last week for the snow, did the rest of the weekend, basically, with Thursday and Friday being a complete mess. We were able to get that in, so it ran on Friday of last week, and it will run again on Friday of this week. And that's standard for our legal ads.
Okay.
So anything that the planning department deals with as far as text amendment, our legal ads, 99% of the time, we found in the Daily News legal ads on Fridays. And they run twice.
All right, very good. Okay.
Good luck, gentlemen.
Yeah, wish you the best.
Good luck. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, we will move on to reports.
All right, couple of items. Happy New Year. Glad to have everybody.
Happy New Year.
Glad we were able to get this meeting in with the crazy, wacky weather that we've experienced, and I'll talk about that here in a second. If you would, please put on your calendars February 6th. That's a Tuesday night at 5:30. There's going to be what we're titling this year a Report to the People. This is kind of our annual, we've met every year in the past couple of years to kind of go over the state of the community with the boards and commissions, things like that. This is something new that we're going to do this year called Report to the People, and we'll send you some more information out. But I just wanted you to go ahead and note on your calendars, 5:30, February 6th. And I believe it's going to be across the street at the youth center, but I'm not 100%. So wait until I send you that information out here in the coming weeks. But go ahead and jot that down for 5:30, February 6th. The last thing that I had, just in keeping with the spirits of the one city moment, just would like to take a moment to just thank the men and women with NCDOT, our Public Services Department, our Public Safety Department, who have been working around the clock the last couple of days to deal with a situation that we're just not used to dealing with here in Jacksonville. It's kind of one of those things to where I've been here for 40 years, and I can remember 2 or 3 big snowstorms. I remember, even though I was a young gun, in 1980, I remember the storm that we had there. We got 23 inches, because I looked it up, because with what we've experienced, I said, I'm going to Google this, because I'm curious. I remember it, but I want to see details. And then in 1989, the December 22nd storm, we got 13 inches. But I don't remember the roads icing over like we experienced this time. And even though DOT did their brine treatment, which is a relatively new thing that we've done here, and having the road graders on the streets and the plows, and the cities, we had our road grader on the street, and we've got a plow or two, we're just not equipped to deal with it. But the guys and gals, they were giving it their all and working when I was sitting at home, and you all were probably sitting at home as well. So I just want to take an opportunity just to kind of thank them for their efforts and just ask everybody, since we're going to have probably another day or two of this, just slow down, be safe, get to your destination, leave a little bit earlier. Whatever it takes, just make sure you get to where you're going. Leave yourself time, plenty of following distance. Just get there. So that's all that I have at this time. Looking forward to 2018.
Okay, great, thank you, Ryan. All right, so once again, Happy New Year to everybody who's watching us on G10, and looking forward to 2018 and all the wonderful things for the city of Jacksonville, so thank you so much for the staff here, everybody on the board, all your hard work, so looking forward to working together, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion, and a second, all right. We're done.
You don't remember